high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Talking Catholic. I'm your host here, Kari, Janisse, and I'm once again with my good friend, Mike Walsh.
We are together. We're together in person as well. This is so nice. Although we're not in your usual lounge, and we're not in the room adjacent to your lounge. We're in a hall, I think?
Yes, we are in Marian Hall, Our Lady's Hall, underneath our church.
A perfect example of a good church basement turned hall. I'm very, very happy about it.
Actually, it was just redone, so it's kind of fresh looking, kind of nice.
Actually, I was noticing your bathrooms over there. I like that they have that sort of like the hideaway wall over there by them.
It's the one thing you notice in a hall, the bathrooms.
Listen, any person who does as much logistics as I do, the bathrooms are very important.
Makes sense.
You always want to make sure they're nearby. Actually, I felt like I had a Kari day today. You are this is now my sixth. We're recording at 8:30 at night. Actually, hold on. No, we're not. We're recording at almost 9 o'clock at night because it's happened on the move all day. I moderated. It's Catholic Schools Week. So
yes, that's right.
So I moderated a spelling bee at my son's school for the 8th grade class.
Wait, like when you say moderate, like are you the judge? Like if they get it wrong, you're like, wrong spelling?
I'm the host, and then it was through our Knights of Columbus. So I was the host, and then we have 3 judges who each tell the kid that you got it wrong.
That is fun.
But it was adorable. We did it. My son's in 7th grade there, but it was our annual 8th grade spelling bee. Okay. So which we love having with them, and they were a blast. And I have to say they did really well. The winning word was ligament. Ligament. Ooh. Yes.
L-I-G.
Come on.
I'm a horrible speller. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah.
That was actually one of the,
I'm gonna say no. I'm not gonna try. I'm gonna get it wrong.
So what? Who cares? Nobody's listening. Go ahead.
People are listening, and then they're gonna know I'm not a good speller. I'm just gonna humbly say pass.
Okay. Well, it's Ligament.
That's what I was gonna say. Actually, I just got nervous. Well, the kids in the spelling bee.
Well, here's the thing. So I kind of felt bad for the kids because. Okay, so we went. I think we ended up going 7 rounds all together, and we lose a couple each round. And the last round
was it the whole 8th grade class?
It was the entire 8th grade class, and the winner's name. I'm not gonna. Her first name was Ida. Now I can't remember her last name, but it was Ida. Mike.
Idaho.
No, it wasn't Idaho. It was Ida was in first place, Michael was in second place, and Grace was in third place. But anyway, but I felt bad because in my mind, the ones third and second got were much harder than ligament.
Oh, you always feel
bad. Yeah, I was like, but that's the luck of the draw. I mean, I look at them, and I mean, the first word was Zephyr. Can you spell Zephyr?
Zepher.
YR.
Why?
No. ER. That was ER. You got it right.
Whatever it is. Wait, I have a funny Catholic Schools Week spelling bee story real quick. My sister was in like the finals. They did it in like 5th or 4th grade in our school growing up. It was, again, one of the highlights of Catholic Schools Week. And it was her and another girl. She still talks about to this day. She still tells this story, and she's in her mid-30s. And it was her and this other girl, and my sister got the one word, I don't know, whatever it was, alligator or something. She got it wrong. Yeah. The other girl had to go, and it's like, you have to get it right, and then you win. And the word was something like, I can't remember the word, if it was, say it was schools or whatever it was. Whatever the word was, it was in the Catholic Schools Week banner, which was hanging up on the far side of the auditorium. So my sister tells the story. You see the girl literally reading the word off the banner, and she's angry to this day about it. So it's just so funny how that played out.
That is mean. We get a list of like 8 pages worth of words. It's an enormous list because you never know how long it's going to go. Mm-hmm. I don't even think we made it through maybe a page and a half tops. But there was only, I have to admit, in the middle of, as we were going through it, I did skip one word just because I didn't feel like seeing all the kids laughing about it. I skipped the word hemorrhoid.
That was smart. That was wise.
I think I made the right.
Prudent of you.
I think we made the right call on that one. But it was usually we do it in person, and this year we had to do it via Zoom, which thankfully, First of all, I of course, I was brokenhearted. We had to do it via Zoom because I love being there with the kids because I joke around with them and I take selfies with them and we have a lot of fun. So we had to do it by Zoom, but it ended up working perfectly because now we're all Zoom experts. So it was actually really well done. The only downside is they were like, "Yeah, can you do it at 9 a.m. in the morning, Mike?" And as you know, I'm not a morning person, so I said, I will. Will I be happy about it? No. So it was that. And then after that, I had 4 more Zoom meetings. And then we had Holy Hour tonight. You and I were both at separate Holy Hours. So
right.
I was at the Diocesan Holy Hour for Vocations up in Stratford. And, you and I were talking earlier this week and we were like, oh, we'll do a podcast. And you're like, can you do 8:30 at night? I'm like, well, I'll make it work. So here we are at 9 o'clock at night recording our podcast. But that's what I'm saying. I had a Kari day because aren't you usually up at like 6:30 in the morning doing live streams at Mass?
Well, on Wednesdays, yes.
Okay.
On Wednesdays. The other days, today I slept in because there was Mass tonight here at our parish, first Thursday. So that was kind of nice. So, yeah, you kind of had a day like me. Just things stacked back to back. So, yeah, I get that. But
well, that's why I'm here, because I knew I couldn't complain about my day, because I'm like, this is Kari's every day. So if she wants to do it.
Busy.
Yeah, well, I like to be busy too, but I will admit that I don't know how this conversation is going to go.
You do like your Netflix, though.
I do. I one of the priests in the diocese convinced me to start watching The Crown, which I'm not a big fan of dramas, but I like historical things, and there's a lot of interesting historical elements in it. So I'm basically forcing myself to ignore all of the classic drama stuff that's in it, but watching it for like the history. I will actually pause it as we're going through, look it up on Wikipedia or some history thing to find out what the real background is, and then I go back and watch the rest of The Crown. But yeah, I've been staying up to like 1 a.m. doing that. So I'll go after we're done here. I'm going to go home, edit this, and then go watch The Crown for an hour.
It's a good, you know what? I'm not a big TV person. I have my ways to wind down are social media. Yeah. But for someone like you, that does enjoy just watching something like that, that's a good way to wind down after a long day. So you deserve it.
It is. It's I don't watch a lot of TV anymore. When there's not sports on, I don't watch a ton. But I have to say that from like 10 to 11 or 10 to midnight or so, I have been getting in the habit of trying to just watch a little bit of TV just to kind of like unwind a little bit. And I have to admit, I've been having a good night's sleep doing that. So it's good. Did you have a good day?
Today?
Yeah.
I had a great day. Yeah, it was really good.
What was your Holy Hour for tonight?
Every Thursday we have Holy Hour. Actually, we have Holy 3 hours from 7 to 10 here at the parish with our Britannia 10 prayer group. And we do the Rosary, the Britannia 10 prayer group. It's Maria Speranza's, one of the 10 one of the 12 groups that were established around the world.
Right.
Britannia 10 is in Williamstown, New Jersey. So
I forgot.
We had our prayer group every Thursday, and it's open to the whole parish. And it's been nice actually having Holy Hours for 3 hours straight every Thursday consistently. People know about it, and it's brought some more people into our prayer group, which has been nice. And
That's
we did
wonderful.
The Rosary, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, Psalm 91, a lot of prayers during that time, and then just silence for the rest until 10 p.m. So
I will admit that I had to text you to let you know that I wasn't sure if I was going to make it here on time, and then you texted back, and I was like, "Oh, she's in church." Sorry about that.
I was like from my watch trying to do it.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
So anyway, we decided to have actually it was your idea. We decided to have sort of a special guest on tonight because
I'm excited.
It's for the last year we're almost at the 1 year anniversary of when sort of life kind of shut down due to COVID, and here we are now where things paint at a glacial speed seem to be kind of reopening, but at the same time you have to fight that urge to kind of like let things get open too early. So we kind of wanted to have a conversation about COVID a little bit. I now have had 2 people in my life that I'm very close to who have been hit hard by COVID. One's 28, and she was like really. We may talk about it on a future podcast with her, as a matter of fact. She had a very unique situation. But you were affected. You and your parish were affected by COVID earlier this year, right?
Well, I think everybody in some way has been affected, right? But as far as like infected, we our guest tonight is Father Chris Bakey, who is our parochial vicar here at Our Lady of Peace, which is where I work full time, and. He did have COVID. He was hospitalized, and he recently has come back to our parish after several weeks being out. And it's a whole story behind that story, so we're going to hear all about it in his diagnosis and all, and kind of the journey he went through with that. I say this though because he recently come back and is now openly sharing about that whole journey from difficult moments leading up to COVID and then getting struck and infected with COVID itself, and then his journey through that, and now his kind of coming back and sharing all about how Our Lady was with him and throughout that whole journey, and how he had a lot of faith and it got him through it. So I'd like to welcome Father Chris Bakey to the podcast.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Thank you.
I have to say also, I love the ligament spelling thing. I would have went for that word instead of the second one.
Yeah, right. Zebra.
I would have got that.
I should have went to the
one
ligament.
But it's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to share life stories, and I always believe that when we share life stories, we share Christ, and that's it. And as we're sharing Christ, it really affects. I was really affected by COVID this year. I was, well, that started in September. I had to have right hip replacement surgery, so I had that. And then that was 9/21, and on 10/21, my dad passed, and I buried him on the 27th of October, and I was diagnosed with COVID. Somebody told me a couple days after that they were diagnosed as positive. I got tested. I ended up being positive. And the whole first week, I sat it out in the rectory, and I quarantined, I isolated myself, and, but I noticed that my pulse ox was going down. How do I know about pulse ox? Because I have a sister who's a nurse anesthetist.
That helps.
And she said, go and get the pulse ox. And I did. So it was 98, 99 in the beginning. Everything was fine, but I was coughing a lot. Mm-hmm. And by the end of the week, I noticed it started to drop, and then it got to 91, and then I called a nurse in the parish to check my lungs. And the look on her face when she checked my lungs told me a big story.
Yeah. With like a stethoscope, right? Like she
she had her stethoscope to check my lungs. But when she went to the bottom parts of both lungs, she said, I can't hear anything.
Oh, wow.
And so that's a problem. We got to go to the hospital. So I didn't know this, but hospitals are in code red now, so nobody can go in with you. The only ones allowed in are fathers whose wives are giving birth. Yeah. So code red is the way they're operating. So she just dropped me off, but she works there. She's an emergency room nurse, and I just want to say she was a godsend to me. Wow. Both before, during, and after. And I'll talk more about her. But she's a woman who came into our church through RCIA about 4 years previously. Wow. And she's been a great person. I remember being in the hospital doing ministry, and she'd be reaching out to people that she would just go see. So this woman was a blessing to me. I ended up performing the marriage of her and her spouse after Christmas. So, so I knew that was happening too. So I also met her spouse to be, and he's an EMT, and his mother's an EMT. And why am I saying this is because after I got out of the hospital, I really didn't know what to do, because I know people would be squeamish about, I had COVID, but this nurse and he both had it, and the mother, so they felt very comfortable, and they told me to come live with them. So wow. I lived with them when they both went to work. The mother-in-law came, and she sat with me. Oh, wow. So, because COVID really affects you more than physically, big time. Really? And at the beginning of the week when I was in there, the first roommate I had, we have roommates in this hospital, Kennedy, Washington. First roommate I had, he was like turning on the TV and watching CNN. He'd watch it for like 2 hours. Yeah. He'd shut off the TV, and then he'd get on the phone trying to convince 6 people why to get Trump out of the office. And it was loud, and it was constant. Then he would take a nap, and he would turn it on for 2 more hours and do the same thing again. No. It was making me sicker. Yeah. It really was, because what's CNN talking about at the time but people dying from COVID and all that stuff? And
they say that,
it's hard.
There's a psychological element to being ill. Being in poor spirits really does negatively affect you. So I believe that,
Yeah. Well, the next day, he was still doing it. So it was really, I felt like a darkness. That's the spiritual component. Like there was a real element of oppressiveness. And, I call it spiritual darkness because it was something I haven't felt in a long time.
Wow.
But it had to do with the fact that you're put in the basement as your first stop. And then if you're failing there, they move you up to an intermediate care unit. And then after that, you're in critical care. So they moved me out of that room, not because of the roommate, but because my pulse ox, they weren't able to control that level of oxygen on the basement floor anymore. So they put me in their care room. And in that room, I had a roommate as well, but we weren't as close together. And we have a curtain down between the center of us, so I barely got to see him. But I really, truly got to hear him speaking to his wife. And he was 91 years old, and they were married 62 years. He took her to the hospital because she fell and bumped her head. And what happened was they COVID tested them. They both tested positive. And they had no idea. So she got fixed up. She went home. And he had to stay. And I was his roommate for like 6 days. And, at 91 years old, to remember to breathe in through your nose because you have oxygen coming in, out through your mouth. Then they give you the spirometer where you have to suck it in to let that ball come up far and let it drop. And they gave him another thing. I have no idea what it is, but he had to blow into that thing, and it made like a fluttering noise like this on his chest. I have no idea what that was because I never saw it. So I'm saying, I would even get confused. Suck this one in, blow this one out. It was really tough. So he's 91, and you could tell that there's a psychosis that happens when you're in the hospital for a long time, especially if you're not familiar with what day it is or whether it's day or night. So he was getting that. Plus he was a little demented, just a little bit. Yeah. But the psychosis kicked in, and he needed help remembering, or he needed his nurse to help him dial his phone, because he would call on his cell phone to his home. And he would either call the house phone or her cell phone. And then half the battle was, what phone did you pick up? Because I'm calling this one and don't call. He was very confused with the phones. And she was too. And he was hard of hearing, and I am too. Yeah. But I heard her the whole time. Oh. And he was saying, I can't hear you. And she said, I can hear you. And I'm saying, I can hear you too. So, but the thing was, what was so good about that is for the days that I was with him, I got to hear true love on that phone call. Yeah. Like he said, I didn't want to call you during Wheel of Fortune. And she said,
that is true love.
She said, Hal, she said, I'd rather talk to you anytime. Oh, yeah. So I got to experience that for the next 4 or 5 days. And that was really beautiful. Yeah. And I was getting worse at the time, so to speak was really tough. But when he was beeping because his pulse ox was dropping, and I had to remind him as best I could, breathe through your nose, in through your nose, and blow out the birthday candles. Smell the roses, blow out the birthday candles. And I kept doing that with him. And so he was doing okay, but towards the end he wasn't doing well. So they moved him out. And when you're moved out, I knew what that meant, you know. So he went to critical care, and I didn't see him anymore. But as they were coming in to move him out, I didn't have oils with me. I didn't have any of the prayer books with me. But I've done so many last rites that I just did it from memory. And I didn't have any oils, but I know God understands, and I trust it too. And so I said, it was Harry. I said, Harry, I just want you to know I just gave you last rites, because he was Catholic. Oh.
Did he know you were a Catholic priest next to him?
Yeah, he did. And he was really, he told everybody that on the phone. And because then he would tell,
he's so proud.
I got the priest next to me. And here it was the wrong parish. I thought it was our parish, but
he was trying
to, but he was excited about that. He must have told his daughters a couple times. But to hear their exchange and just losing my parents, that was really spiritually uplifting. And it was really a pleasure to help. But I couldn't go over there because I was tethered to my own stuff. Yeah. So just to do it all through curtain and us being hard of hearing, what'd you say, huh? What? And both machines are beeping because our pulse oxes are dropping below They had mine set at 84. So pulse oxes are below, and it just beeps. So I told him, every time you hear the beep, it's probably me, but it could be you. And so he paid attention.
Well, that's good.
But things got worse for me. I started deteriorating even more. I was on a 5-day treatment of remdesivir, they call it. Mm-hmm. And it's an hour drip intravenously. And they also give you a shot of a steroid, a very strong steroid, through it. The first time they did that to me, I had an issue because I also have a panic disorder. Mm-hmm. I quit seminary 4 weeks before ordination.
Really?
Because I found out I had it. I didn't know I had it.
Yeah.
So I got diagnosed. I have stage fright caused by panic disorder.
So obviously a priest is exactly
yeah.
the
So you can't really go on the priesthood.
That's setting in right in
so, but
priesthood. Wow.
at the time, Bishop McHugh was great, and he allowed me. He said, whenever you're better, I didn't even have the thought of getting better because it was so painful.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even understand it. So to make a long story short, I felt that feeling for the first time when they put that steroid in me because it was such a strong steroid.
Wow. Really?
Would you just get nervous or panicked? Is that
no, it's a panic, and I couldn't breathe.
Like triggered it?
Yeah, big time.
Okay.
And so I called the doctor. They got the doctor in, and I said, I can't tell you where I've been with panic disorder, but I can't do this again.
Wow, really?
So they broke my steroid down into 2 doses, So everything's a balance. That's what I learned about COVID. You got to balance your steroid intake, then you got to balance it being weaned from you, then you got to balance remdesivir and stopping that suddenly after 5 days. It was at that time where I was my sickest.
Really?
And so the 5 days didn't work.
No.
And I was not able, I barely could talk at that point. And my pulse ox was 79 with full oxygen where I was. And so I was like...
And just to kind of talk a little bit, so when you talk about the issues with your lungs, was that like you had COVID plus pneumonia, or this was just...
I had what they called double COVID pneumonia and bacterial pneumonia.
Oh.
So I went in the hospital with a fever.
Yeah.
And they gave me 2 antibiotic drips immediately. I never had a fever the next day onward. So I guess that took care of the bacterial part.
Yeah.
But it's the viral part that they can't treat anything with it. But they know COVID makes your lungs swell on the inside. Mm-hmm. So my lungs, 2-day shot of my lungs, it was like just on the bottom of my right lung. My left lung was totally filled with COVID. So 2 days later, the whole lung was filled with COVID.
Wow.
And they said hardly any airspace.
Wow.
And that was on 11/20. And I know that because 11/21 is my anniversary, the day before my anniversary. And I remember saying to God, and I always said this to the Blessed Mother too, I was born on the feast day of the Visitation, and I was ordained on the presentation of the Blessed Mother. Yeah. I said, I am so sure I'm going to go home on a Marian feast day. But I said, I didn't expect it to be my anniversary though, So that was kind of a bummer, So spiritually I was being, it was really heavy. It was very heavy. They encourage you to lay on your stomach when you have COVID. Mm-hmm. So I was on my stomach, and this same nurse who came and checked my lungs out, she happened to come in, and I'll be honest, I was crying because there's nothing they could do. That's what they told me. We've done everything we could. Yeah. And that's what I went to bed with that night. And I can't tell you how bad that was. It was depression. It was, I just buried my dad, and he was my biggest fan, So, it was tough, and I was really feeling everything, and all except my hip. My hip's doing great, everybody. If you want a good doctor for hip, call me up. He's tremendous. I never had any problems with it. So, but anyway, it was really heavy, and it's an emotional thing. Yeah. And like I was looking death in the eyes, and I was getting worse. That was the worst part. Yeah. So the next day, I called my sister. She's in Texas, the nurse anesthetist. Mm-hmm. And I made her my durable power of attorney at that point because I couldn't talk. I couldn't breathe and talk. I had to choose between breathing, eating, or talking. Wow. So I chose breathing,
Good choice.
And I told my sister she had to do everything for me. And so I gave her permission to access my records, but I also gave the nurse in the hospital, who's helped me all along, to read the charts to her. And she took time to read the entire chart to her, which my sister
great.
says is really unheard of. And she couldn't believe how great that was.
Wow.
That helped her assess
Yeah.
my condition. So she talked the doctor into giving me another round of, my sister did, another round of the remdesivir. Or I can't even say it. It's that
Remdesivir, yeah.
The remdesivir. I can't even say it. That's COVID fog, everybody. That's what that looks like. So anyway, I was laying in bed that night, though, on the 20th, and I remember just crying, But then when her name's Bakey, this nurse, so I won't give her last name because I don't know what's good or not good on podcasts or whatever. But her name is Bakey, and she came in. And it was right at the moment of total despair. And she came in.
Was she on your floor, or did she would just come visit you?
She would come visit me.
Oh, nice.
But she was in the hospital, and that was key. That's why I went to the hospital.
To that one.
Because I knew nurses from here. So that's one of the advantages of being in a place for a little while.
Yeah.
You get to know people. So she came up, and she just started karate chopping my back because I was face down. I didn't see her come in. And she saw that I was crying, so she was just trying to console me and stuff like that. And then she
With karate chops, or was that for the breathing?
Yeah, to break up the lungs.
For your breathing.
Yeah, when people have cystic fibrosis involved, they used to do the karate chops on them.
Yeah.
So that's what she was doing on me because
Gotcha.
she knew I was having a problem breathing.
Wow.
So
She's
after
good.
that, yeah, she was great. She cleaned me up. I felt like $1 million after that. But the most important thing she did was she showed me a picture that her husband-to-be's father, he sent a request of prayer for me to get better to Our Lady of Lourdes in France.
Wow. And
On the picture was a copy of the prayer request and for total healing for Father Chris Bakey of COVID-19. So I got to see the picture. And I had just been at the Lourdes maybe within the past 3 years, I guess.
Oh, yeah, it was not too long ago.
So,
Yeah.
but Lourdes is amazing.
Yeah.
I've been to a lot of pilgrimages and a lot of different sites, but Lourdes was really special to me.
Yeah.
It really was. Because I guess I watched the Song of Bernadette when I was younger, and they showed it on the bus as we were heading there. And, the room on the TV is so much bigger than the room they lived in. It was unbelievable how small that room was. But, having seen all that and getting an opportunity to sit at the grotto, I always do one full night only because, it's peaceful. And one of the things in the Song of Bernadette is you get to see you get to hear the leaves like blowing in the wind. I heard the noise when I was sitting there, of course, because the winds are coming. There's this beautiful stream behind us, and it was the stream that Bernadette didn't cross because she had an illness when she was younger. And her mother told her never to go across. So her sisters did. They were looking for firewood.
Yeah.
So she sat on the side, and she heard the rustling of the leaves, and then the Blessed Mother appeared to her. And the grotto, they have a statue of where she said she saw her, exactly where she saw her. And so things progressed with her. And, of course, she's hearing things from the Blessed Mother. And the main title of our Blessed Mother of Lourdes is the Immaculate Conception.
Yeah.
Only because they were just beginning to talk about that. And they couldn't believe that somebody who was not educated well because she was sick her whole young life, that somebody could even say that. And that's when her bishop really began to listen to her. And she said, the only thing she said to me, the Immaculate Conception. So she had no clue what that meant. And he had just heard it for the first time in the bishop's talks or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was pretty amazing. And then, she grew. I mean, the appearances happened frequently. And then the Blessed Mother said to dig a hole where she was so that there's water under there and it'll come out and it'll be healing water. And so she did. She started digging, and the mud came out. And she trusted the Blessed Mother so much. She's put it on her face thinking that would turn to water, But it ended up being something that people shamed her for as she was leaving that particular area and made a mockery of her whole family kind of thing.
Yeah.
But somebody sitting there after she left looked down because he felt his hand getting wet, and sure enough, there was water coming out of the hole she dug.
Yeah.
And that hole's still present to be seen. It's covered up with plexiglass. But it's in a cavern, by the Blessed Mother. And of course they have the baths there.
Right.
And I went to confession right before the baths, and then I went to the bath. There's such a different feeling when you go into that bath. I don't know if anybody listening can relate, but you go in and you come out. They don't give you a towel to dry off with, but you're like instantly dry. And it's like a real soothing comfort to your skin. It really is.
Yeah, I've 2 or 3 years ago, I know Bishop Sullivan went to Lourdes with, at the time, Father Michael Romano, still Father Michael Romano, but he went with Father Michael Romano, and a bunch of the seminarians. And, I like any good priest from the Bronx. Bishop Sullivan's pretty pretty hard guy, and but he talked, and he's been to Lourdes many times, and the times when he gets softest, I guess might be the way to put it, is when he talks about his experience at Lourdes and what it meant to see the Malls, the people who are sick, and take part in being a spiritual comfort to them, which is something the seminarians were doing while they were there. They were actually helping move the ill into the grotto, into the baths. For the nighttime. As famously, in air quotes, on this podcast, everyone knows I've traveled nowhere. Kari's traveled rings around me by comparison. So I have never made it to anywhere. Actually, I've made it to the outskirts of France, but I've never made it to Lourdes. But that's one of those things where everyone that I talk to who have been to Lourdes have been blown away by what they saw, what they felt, and how amazing it was. So I'm not shocked in the least to hear how meaningful it was to you.
It was so meaningful, but that meaning came back to me in a split second when I needed it the most.
Yeah.
Wow. It was when as soon as she showed me the picture, because it was on the letterhead of Our Lady of Lourdes in France.
Yeah.
And so I know it was
sent. He could have sent it anywhere. He could have sent it to his own parish.
Because I didn't know her husband to be. I didn't know her father. And that was the one, So so he showed me that picture. She showed me that picture, and as soon as she showed me that picture, I remember a big smile came over my face, and everything I was feeling, like depression or down or whatever, it left me.
Oh, what a moment!
It was a great moment. And then that's when Becca, the nurses are great, but they're so overworked, and COVID is so rampant in Gloucester County right now. They have. At the time when I was in there, they had a 7-hour wait in the waiting room just to be seen in the emergency room.
Oh, boy.
So that's a long time. So, but COVID's very rampant and there were a lot of patients. So she, after a full day, not even 12 hours, she put like 14-hour days in because it was so busy. And then she came up and she tended to me like that. And I said, that's over and beyond the call of duty, you know. But she helped me so much. And then she shaved my face, she washed my hair. I felt that was such a critical moment that she really wants to, she's going to be a nurse practitioner, hopefully by May. And she's hoping that we can discuss with the executive board how important not only the physical is to be tended to, but the emotional, the spiritual. Because it was dark, I have to say. It was really dark.
I tell you, we've been, Kari and I in particular have been talking about wanting to have a couple of healthcare professionals who've been dealing with COVID on the podcast to talk about that. Because, the feedback we've been getting that, so everyone's been really negatively affected by COVID in some way or another, either ripple effects or economically or the shutdown or just, the depression of having put up with this for a year. Quite frankly, the practitioners, the healthcare practitioners, doctors, nurses, staff, cleaning crews, EMTs, right, who have been going through all of this for so long, and it's. I know that there are those who think it's not that big a deal, and maybe in some parts of the country it isn't, but in parts of the country where it is, it's really taken its toll. And so we've had a nurse practitioner on. Actually, she's a nurse, not a nurse practitioner. The parish nurses who are throughout the diocese. Yeah. The head of the head of the parish nurses is a woman by the name of Nicole Kiefer, who's a great person. Anyone who watches our Talking Catholic YouTube shows, if you've ever seen Lex Kiefer's Changing with the Tides episodes, Nicole's her mother. She's been on the podcast a couple of times, and she's actually been reaching out to me a lot. We want to do something special for all of these people who have been, sort of fighting it on the front lines, just to let them know that, they're loved. And we know how terrible it's been for them, for so many of them that have been putting up with this. So it's the fact that nurse was so kind to you and so wonderful to you, it
saved my life.
Amazing.
It makes me, I tell you, it makes me so happy. And, I know we've been talking about this for a year, and maybe it's gotten old for some people, but you can't let it get old, because the people who are doing this, who are making these sacrifices and this time, and they're getting paid for it. But, trust me, as someone who's constantly working too many hours without having to put up with that level of difficulty, I get tired. Imagine having to deal with that with people dying and being sick all around.
It's like living Kari 5 times in one day.
Exactly.
I can't be compared to any of these people.
I can't be Kari once in one day. But it's true.
Incredible. Her energy level is incredible.
Yeah, no, I don't know how she does it. I think it's prayer, but I'm not positive.
Yeah, it is.
Coffee and Jesus.
Coffee and Jesus. Well, that's a good pair. But so hearing you talk about that really, really touches a nerve for me, because I hope that people are still thinking about it and realizing that there is a lot of difficulty out there, and that the people who are tending to the ill are in many ways dealing with things that nobody should have to be dealing with for a year, for 1 year straight.
Especially those in specialized hospitals, like Children's Hospital. Yeah. They're getting the sickest of the kids, because that's such a world-renowned place. Yeah. And of course, they're going to have more mortality, which is very low for kids, but just one kid dying is crazy. It really affects you. I was called there when I was at St. Charles Borromeo, and I was a deacon, and there were 2 kids that needed heart and lung transplants. Wow. And they were there, and one of them got it, but 5 years later it didn't continue. Yeah. The other one never got it, and he was only like 2. And to be on that side of the fence and to wait for that and all that, talk about sad. That was sad. But the good part is that those particular families really knew what life was about when it was done. Yeah. Not when it was necessarily finished, but when they had their children, they were working together to be with the child. And they found that to be the most amazing time in their life. Yeah. And they had other children, and it was just, they stopped and they smelled the roses, because they knew how important that was. And so that's what I like about that story, But the specialized nurses, I have a sister who works up in Morristown General. She's a nurse as well. She was on critical care and delivery, and because they were overwhelmed. She's in Morris County. Yeah. That was the highest county first in Jersey. And they asked her to suit up in that, astronaut type looking thing, and to go and make the phone calls to the families and be with the families and the one dying.
That's tough.
And it was tough. She did it for quite a while. And she got burned out. Yeah. She's not up there anymore. And, it's so hard. But families wanted to hug them, so she would hug them, and she would make them look decent before she even put them on, and that was her job, and that was tough.
Yeah.
I can imagine how tough that was,
It's incredible. But, I mean, at the same time, there are these terrible stories, and there's certainly a lot of them, but you ended up being a success story. You
so
had,
much so, I'm getting the
odds.
nickname Lazarus. I've been thinking, he doesn't know I know this, but I think the bishop even called it to me once. So, it was that day, that night, I really thought by the 21st I'd be dead, But on the 21st, they came in and told me, and it was my sister in Texas that got them to do it. They gave me a second round of remdesivir, another 5-day drip, another 5-day steroid. And by day 3, I noticed when the doctor told me to breathe in when he was checking my lungs, it's the first time I could do it since before the nurse did it at my house a couple weeks before. So I'm like, ooh, this is getting great, And sure enough, my sister also told me, breathe on that spirometer like 10 times an hour. That's really a hard thing to do.
Really?
Because you're sucking in and you're trying to balance a ball between these two lines. And it's hard. It's hard on your lungs. It's hard. It hurts, But she said, I don't care how painful it gets, do it, you know? So I knew she had my records. I knew she was talking to doctors, and I never saw her face looking the way it did when she was FaceTiming me. And what broke my heart, but gave me even a stronger will to live, I have 18 nieces and nephews, and she has twin boys that are 13. And she adopted those children as a single mom because she never got married. She always wanted children. So obviously, economically, she could take care of it. And she went with a job down in Texas, and the boys were probably about 8 then. And so for the first 8 years of their life, I was like, I'm not the father figure, but I'd smack them around like I was. No, I'm kidding. But they were really good. And they were, she was on the phone with me one time, and Noah, one of the boys, comes up and says, hey, Mom, is Uncle Chris going to die?
Oh, my.
It broke my heart.
Wow.
And it did, because right about then, the nurses came in and the respiratory therapist to increase my oxygen even more.
Wow.
And that's when they put another level with the bag and the thing. And I just put the phone. I said, Kath, we need to go. I don't want the kids to see this.
Yeah.
So they started to do that anyway. My healing began when I saw the Blessed Mother at the Lord's, because they have her in that prayer petition, and it's typed up in Lord's when you call it in. And when I saw that, I just I know it's going to be fine.
Wow. On the anniversary of your priesthood.
The evening of. It could have been after midnight. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And it's so amazing. This podcast will come out the week of Our Lady of Lourdes feast day.
I know.
So isn't that God's providence amazing, right? It comes out
That's
Monday.
Right. Comes out Monday, and 4 days later, it's World Day of the Sick. So it was very well timed. Yeah.
So Our Lady of Lourdes is very powerful for me.
Yeah.
But I've had other Marian apparition sites I visited, and Medjugorje was also one of them. In 1989, before I was a priest, you know. Back then, I had a 14-year business career before I went in the priesthood, and so I could afford to go there. So I knew nothing about pilgrimages, right? So I ordered a stretch limo to take me to the New York airport. And I felt really bad when we returned, because there's a guy with the sign, Mr. Bakey, come this way. And I'm trying to, here, their van's over here. They were in a 12-passenger van. I was embarrassed, but I had no idea. I had no clue. But I went over there.
You're in good company. I haven't been on a pilgrimage either. I've never.
It was.
Don't know why.
Let me tell you something. That was my first time out of the country. That was my first international trip.
Same for me, Father. When I went to Medjugorje,
Really?
First time out of the country.
How about that?
All that.
And they had
to get my
machine
passport,
guns when
all
I got
that.
off the plane. I'm like, now we see them here, but back then we didn't see them at all.
Yeah.
So it scared me, you know.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, everything they served was in oil. And I remember everything. A pizza, you order a pizza, it comes floating in a pan in oil. Their ice cream is delicious, though. Just a hint if anybody's going there. But I went there before any commercialism, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I've had really great experiences there. And you know when I had them, and I could say the same is true of COVID, when I let go.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Because I was in Medjugorje for 10 days. On day 8, I felt absolutely nothing.
Wow.
And everybody gave me a stack of petitions, like this high. I know you can't see me, but I'm
like a foot high.
A head's length,
like
a foot high. And I get to the first day, and there's some guy in our group about my age, and he said, let's go up that mountain. I said, all right. Well, it took 2 hours up and 3 hours down, but while I was up there, I thought, wow, that's a beautiful place. So I found a rock. I studied it in proximity to the crucifix. They have it up there, thank God. But I pulled the rock back, and I put the petitions in the ground, and I stood on the rock, and I just prayed that anything was God, that it remains. Anything not of God be removed from these people's lives. I got off the stone, took the trip down. We got back to the landlord's house. That's who we had to stay with back then. And the tour guide finally was there. And she said, well, we're going to see one of the visionaries tomorrow. So if you have any petitions, that's where you give them.
Oh,
and
no.
I'm like, I was really mad the first day of Medjugorje, I have to say, to be totally honest, because I was doing everything wrong, I wasn't doing anything right. And after day 8, I realized, people are going to ask me about this experience, I'd seen it on 2020. They were putting electrodes in the kids' heads as they were try to understand what ecstasy was, and they were in that kind of state. And I had experienced like that because I knelt down when we did see the Blessed Mother. And without the full story, just suffice it to say, I did not feel a thing on my knees. But I took a woman who I considered to be much holier than me to the site, and nothing was happening. I said, this is where it happened, So I said, oh, we got to kneel down. As soon as we knelt down, the pain was unbearable. The road was all shards of stone, not even rounded stones. There was no place to kneel on the entire road. Yeah. And I'm like, that's what that feels like, So to make a long story short, the Blessed Mother has been a big part of my journey, even to the priesthood, obviously. And, the date that I was born, the date I was ordained, I got to choose that date. But I know that she'll come. And I felt like I was dying, but I didn't feel like it was complete yet, though. Yeah. But I was scared to death.
You had more to do.
Yeah.
Did so when did you finally get out? Like, how much further did you end up staying in?
I did 5 days. On day 3, I started feeling better, but you have to complete the series. I since found out they don't give 2 series. So my sister must have given him or whatever, but they won't give 2 series of that. And because I have other friends who have it now, and they try to get the second, they want to give it to them.
Wow, really?
So I don't know how it happened to me, but
it's a miracle.
But I know how tough my sister is. So, and she could talk their language, which is a great thing to have in the back pocket when you need that. So, anyway, day 5, I was down to the first grade of oxygen, the little thing in your nose. Yeah. The second one is a big strap across your nose, and the third tier is like the mask with the airbag on the bottom. And they all go up to like 100 liters. So I was actually on the airbag up to the top. And they told me I was going to critical care that night on the 20th. And they told it again to me on the next night as well. And I said, because I couldn't talk, I said,
yeah, right.
Yeah. So I would write Dorable, DP, my sister's name, so they'd say it. Yeah. They knew it, but I couldn't even talk. And I was just like, we're not going on a vent.
I remember texting you a little bit during that time, trying to keep in touch with you and let you know we were praying. And I know you had mentioned you couldn't talk a lot and you wanted to just rest, and you didn't really text back here and there only. But when you did, it was getting close to Thanksgiving. You said, Our Lady's going to give me a gift for Thanksgiving. Did you end up coming out right on Thanksgiving Day, was it?
I did, right on Thanksgiving Day. Wow. I got out. I was released at probably 3 o'clock, but I wanted to take a shower. Mercy. But I wanted to take a shower.
Okay.
Because I wanted to make sure that I could breathe, because I had never... I needed to know how bad my pulse ox would drop. So I took the shower there, and I was winded. I was afraid again, because I was like, I don't know how this is going to happen outside of here. So they sent me home with oxygen. They told me they were going to do that. And I went Becky picked me up, went to her house. She had Thanksgiving dinner at the table.
Nice.
And
that's nice.
it was the most, even before she came, from the time that it started, from the time I saw the picture, that's when I became very thankful. And I had to be reminded, when you let go, God really does do what he needs to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really a big advocate. I say that a lot in the homilies, actually.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't ever fear being alone, because that's when your other senses become heightened, especially your sense of really what everything's really all about, which is God and love, you know? And it's happened to me many times. And when you're going through something, it's hard to get there. That's why you need friends, you need prayers. I knew everybody here was praying for me, but I asked the staff not to mention that I was in the hospital because it's right up the street.
Yeah, right.
But at the time, I didn't know it was code red, so they couldn't come in anyway. Because
You'd have all these
I know
people
I was
knocking
feeling
down the
sick.
door.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh, it's countless people were trying to get information too. It was very hard.
They
I'll
were
tell you,
very
as a
good.
staff worker.
I have to.
I was like,
Father
just keep praying
Maz,
for him.
the
He's
whole
doing
staff,
okay.
Yeah, and what I wrote about this in our
bulletin, on our social media.
Yeah, on social media, because I realized the people didn't know where I was. The last they heard, I was having a hip surgery.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from beginning to end, this was months of.
Oh, it was
About 4 months.
Well, I just came back part-time in January just to feel it out here and there.
Yeah.
Now I decided to go full throttle on February 1st, and I haven't stopped since 8 o'clock Mass this morning. So, so the energy's there, and I'm very thankful I'm alive.
Yeah.
You know, but it really came at a time. You know, you can be alive all you want to be, but if you're not alive in God's way, you're not alive.
Yeah.
You know?
Very true.
So I don't know how to explain that, but I felt that very clearly in my bed that night.
Yeah.
And when she showed me that picture, I was already crying. I was just like, I couldn't talk because I'm like, you know, she's like karate chopping harder, and she didn't know what was going on. So she found out a couple of days later what was going on.
Now, since you've been back and well, and have you seen? I know your sister lives in Texas, but have you seen her in person yet?
No.
At that moment, no.
No, but we've gotten a lot closer.
Sure.
You know. So.
Any plans to see her soon in the boys that you can have that reuniting thankfulness?
Yeah, I would love to, but we don't travel because of COVID.
Right, that's true. I forgot about that. Yep.
But I'm going to get my antibodies tested tomorrow. The doctor sent a blood order in for me for LabCorp because I want to give plasma back, you know, for the antibodies, even though I couldn't receive that. You know, because they say once you go on oxygen, you couldn't receive it. That was Thanksgiving. Now the opposite's true.
Oh, really?
So they're going to that as their first course of action, according to somebody in critical care right now, who I'm advocating for. That's another thing. I don't know why they just don't let people who have COVID to go in and help with the elderly to dial phone numbers. I can't tell you how much that broke my heart.
Yeah.
How many times they tried to get in touch, and she's yelling, "I can hear you fine," and I can't hear you. You know? And
Well,
I wanted to get up and help, but I couldn't.
That's the thing with these.
It's frustrating.
These kinds of illnesses, you know, in the treatment form that are so widespread. It's like, you know, a lot of times it's okay. Things that made perfect sense 6 months ago, you suddenly realize you got to do completely different because now all these other people you've sort of learned from it. So, which is the same as every other illness in the world.
Right,
it's just that it doesn't usually happen as part of a worldwide pandemic. So this one, I mean, every nuance is you know, sort of being reevaluated as you move along. But I tell you, you know, that's, you know, we're just about ready to close up the podcast. But I tell you, you know, I'm very happy to hear that you had a successful, if not miserable experience with COVID.
Miraculous too.
But it ended, it ended miraculously. And, you know, it certainly feels like, you know, it's kind of like not that you needed to be re-inspired in your connection to Mary, but it certainly sounded like it had so many influences that Marian connection. Yeah. Ironically, we sit here in Marian Hall.
St. Mary's,
St. Mary's, that's right.
I mean, all the names of our Blessed Mother.
Yes.
She's got you.
Anyway, she's got me.
Yeah,
no matter what,
you're definitely in the right place. You were in the right place because you knew the nurse. You were in the right place because you were nearby the hospital, and you were in the right place because you're here again. So we talk about Mary a lot on this podcast, and particularly Kari. Kari talks about Mary all the time, and which is good because I never remembered to do it because I'm terrible at everything. But
no, you're not.
But I hope people will take away from this not just the experiences you had with COVID, but also your connection, how your spirituality and your connection to Mary really was able to buoy you through this. And I hope people kind of remember that. So, Father Bakey, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. So and Kari, thank you very much for hanging out late here with us and making this happen. And to our listeners, thank you all for tuning in. And we'll talk to you again next week. Bye, everybody.
God bless.
God bless.